Hey.
Everybody. Welcome to the Nature Journal Club. I'm very grateful to my tech support team here who helped us get our camera going and rolling. Today what I want to do is take a look at leaves and stems. I'm going to be showing you some tricks to draw what you see. This is part of a three-part series on drawing trees. The first part, what we're going to be doing is thinking about trees when you're really up close with them. We're going to be looking at leaves, we're going to be looking at stems, branches. The next class, we'll be looking at trees from a distance, a little bit further away, where we'll be drawing the whole tree. The third class will be even further away from that and drawing forests. Both when you're in the forest looking out through the forest and then on a distant hillside looking back at the forest. So the forest from in out and from out in. But today we're going to be focusing on some tricks on how to draw the leaves, and then some nice things that we're going to be getting here are some fundamental ideas about drawing any object. We're also going to be taking a look at some botanical tricks that are going to help you be able to understand what you see. All right? I don't have my clicker today, so I'm going to be, here we go. The first thing we want to take a look at is technically what is a leaf, because the way we normally think about a leaf is anything that looks like this. But if you're talking to botanists, for a botanist, a leaf is, well, they say first find the little leaf bud, and then the leaf is everything else out from there, no matter if it looks like this or this. So this whole thing is a leaf. A leaf. Because there's a leaf bud here, there's a bud here, an axillary bud, everything out from the bud, poof, that's the leaf. So what you want to do is first sort of change your definition of what a leaf is. If there is a bud, everything out from that is a leaf. All right? In this plant, though, the bud actually occurs down here, which means this whole thing is one leaf. And each one of these lobes here is a leaflet on that leaf. So, same thing here. This all is a single leaf. This is a single leaf. So these, what are called compound leaves made out of leaflets, there are two basic styles. This one, right, where it kind of looks like the palm of a hand, and each one of these are a finger, so they kind of come out from some central point here. They also can have one central stalk like this, with little leaves attached on either, leaflets I should say, attached on either side of it. So if there's a bud down here, the whole thing is one leaf. So first good thing if you're drawing a leaf is figure out, am I looking at a leaf or am I looking at a leaflet? Right? And one other kind of term, sort of botanical term, if you're talking to botanists, never say the leaf stem, or they'll get grumpy. This is what they call the petiole. We're not going to be dropping a ton of vocabulary on you, but this is a good one. This is the petiole here. That is, so the leaf stem thing, there's our petiole. Imagine taking this structure, so you have this thing with little leaflets sticking out of it, and if you turn that into a fractal, and put a leaf bud here, you've got something that looks like this. So each one of these here, here's your leaf bud. What is this?
Leaf.
That's a leaf. All right? So the first thing we're doing here is we're just sort of changing our definition of what makes a leaf. Now we're going to take a look at, once you've figured out what is a leaf, you look at how those leaves are arranged on the plant itself. Because on some plants, you'll have one leaf coming out here, and then the next leaf coming out here, and then the next leaf coming out here. They're alternating sort of where they stick out. But on some plants, every time you find a leaf on this side, there's one right on the other side. We call these opposite leaves. And they can either be set up so that they're all parallel to each other, or like, say, a mint plant, where one set's towards you, the next set is to the sides. The next set is towards you, the next set is to the sides. Those are kind of the arrangement of leaves. So this one here we're alternating. Here and here, they're coming out opposite each other. So once you figure out, this is a plant with a leaf, now you're going to take a look and see how those attach to the plant. If you figure out they're actually doing this arrangement 3/4 of the way through your picture, you will be sad, right? So that's why we try to kind of botanically look at the thing right at the start. Has anybody here taken a botany class?
1,000 years
That's
ago.
cool.
Like 1,000 years ago? Did anybody show up for the second day? Right? Because here's the problem. Very often, you're like, I love plants. They're just so beautiful and elegant. And they say, all right, let's learn about botany. And they say, memorize this. Right? Here's a chart of all of these are different terms for shapes of leaves. Right? Oh, by the way, this is intentionally done so small that you can't read it. Because the good news is, for this workshop, you don't need to learn these names. But here's what we do want to pay attention to. Botanists have different terms for just a leaf of every shape. If it's heart-shaped, if it's backwards heart-shaped, if it's the same width all the way down, if it's wider at the base, if it's wider at the tip, right? If it's got lots of wobbles on it. Each one of those gets a different term. So, the reason that botanists do this is because a lot of them think they can't draw. And they want to communicate this to somebody. And they say, well, I'll say, this leaf looks this way. So they come up with terms for all these different things. But you can draw a picture of it. Right? And we'll show you tricks to allow you to do that more precisely. But it is really helpful to notice, where do the botanists kind of have a bunch of terms for things? Those give us, sort of point to us, areas where we had better pay very, very close attention, because we're going to expect to see a lot of variation in those things. So the first thing, we're going to take a little bit of a look at leaf shape. And I'm going to show you a technique for getting the leaf shape accurately in a sketch. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off, here's my leaf, I'm going to draw it over here. What I'm going to be doing is making a drawing that is going to start with the most general, rough shape of the leaf. And I'm going to be progressively moving towards detail. So I'm not starting off dropping in a whole bunch of detail, I'm going to be progressively moving towards more detail. A useful kind of vantage or way to think about it is, here's the central axis of this leaf. I'm going to lightly and loosely on my paper draw that line. I do a lot of my initial sketches with a non-photo blue pencil. That's why I'm drawing this in blue. I use the erasable Kohl Erase non-photo blue pencil, and it gives me a very, very ghosted mark. If you're doing this with a regular graphite pencil, you just have to draw very lightly. Very, very, very lightly. Perhaps using a hard pencil, no pressure. You just want to make a little ghosty mark. These initial marks, we're going to be building up our leaf lightly, loosely, quickly, kind of blocking in its basic shape. We're not going to be drawing carefully and precisely from the start. All right? So I'm going to start with this, and then you're going to notice that instead of jumping in and drawing the edge of the leaf, I'm going to go through a series of steps that make drawing this leaf easier. I'm not going to do everything at once. The more that you kind of can compartmentalize into kind of a bite-sized piece, the easier it's going to be. So the next bite-sized piece is, I'm going to put an oval down here that's going to give me the basic width shape of this leaf. Right? It's long and it's about this wide. Another thing I want to notice is this leaf is widest about in here. So on my little oval here, I'm going to lightly, loosely sketch a little crossbar saying, remember to make your leaf widest in here. There's my wide part of my leaf. In some leaves, the widest part is towards the tip. In some leaves, it's the same width all the way through. So I'm going to take a look at that little detail point. Then, I'm going to block in the general angle of the tip and this little thumb sticking out on the mitten here. I don't have to be precise, I just want to roughly break this in. I can get that refined a little bit more by taking a look at the negative shape right here. So the negative shape means I'm not going to look at the leaf itself. Look at the shape of the white arrow pointing down right here. Do you see this white arrow pointing down? That white arrow has an edge like this and an edge like that. When you look at this white arrow, the negative shape here, it's actually easier to see the contour of the leaf than if you're looking at the leaf. If you're looking at the leaf, you get too distracted by the leaf, because that's where all the detail is. But if instead you're looking at where the leaf isn't, you can see that negative shape more precisely. So just try this as an experiment. Look at the leaf, trying to notice the shape of the edge. Then look at the negative space and see which one is easier for you to really see the contour of that leaf. And you'll see that when you look at the white arrow, there's nothing else distracting you. It's just, boom, that's right there in your face. So I don't color in my negative shape, but here I'm just putting a little mark in here just to remind us, like, this is the point where I really kind of look at the negative shape. And then I've got lightly, loosely enough information to put down my non-photo blue pencil, pick up my graphite pencil or my pen, and begin to slowly and carefully work my way around that edge. So here I'm kind of like working on, like, it's got a little tooth here, it's got a little bug bite here, you know. And this part of kind of drawing is slow and careful. Now the first part was fast and loose, but I can now be precise on top of this framework that I've made because I've already worked out a lot of those problems. And then I can put in even more detail. I can start to put in, here's the center, the mid vein of my leaf. Very often what I'll do is, you notice that the mid vein is very clear right down here, but not easy to see up here. So this line that I put in, as it gets closer to here, I'm going to let that fade out, sort of peter out. All right, so that line, instead of going all the way to the tip, which then makes it look kind of cartoony, I'm going to have that come up and then fade out, so that you don't really see it going all the way to the tip. They do actually the same thing with birds' beaks. If you draw the line through the bird's beak like that, it makes it look very, very cartoony. That's what we know that it does. Very often though, what you see is something like that. I'll use a pen that works. We'll try that. That's better. You just sort of have that line kind of pointing out this way and then getting lighter. And people will read that as that, but it looks much less cartoony than that. Same thing with that leaf vein, getting skinnier and skinnier and skinnier. It's really hard to see it kind of connecting into that spot. Each plant, the side veins on here are going to have different patterns on each plant. So look at your plant and see how those sort of sub-veins attach to that main central vein. All right? Are they straight? Are they curved? Are they straight but then curve at the end? What is the spacing between them? Do they come in opposite each other, so one vein coming down here and the next vein coming like that? Or do they alternate? One vein coming down here, the next vein coming in like that. Do they come in straight? Do they come in and loop in? So the answer is going to be in the specific plant that you're looking at. There is no generic rule for this. There is no, overall answer to that. It's going to be looking specifically at the individual plant that's right there in front of you. And then a little bit more detail. I'm going to get in some of the little veins off the little veins. If you put veins everywhere, you'll be drawing veins for the rest of your life, right? And you often think, it's going to look better. I've got to do everything. But when you put in every vein, partway through, you're going to get tired. And so you start kind of like putting them in, and then it just looks like chowder. So a few veins that, a few of those little veins, you can show the density of them, or pick some area on your plant and really kind of get in a little bit more detail there. People will then look at that and sort of read that there's that amount of veins through the whole thing. You don't have to draw them everywhere, and if you do, you probably think this song is about you, don't you? All right? So, there's some veins, but we'll get back to veins. There'll be more on veins. What I want to do is just do another example, but with a slightly more complicated leaf shape, and take a look at how you might approach drawing something like this. What you're going to see is it's the same thing. I'm going to start generally and loosely, And I'm going to slowly work my way towards more precise and deliberate, careful details and lines. So on this one, I'm starting off thinking, what is the overall shape of this leaf? Right? How wide is it? How long is it? And I'm just putting in an oval with those general proportions on my piece of paper. So I don't have to, I'm not getting in there and drawing the edge right from the start. I'm looking at this very simple thing saying, my leaf is about this wide and this big. It's pretty wide. All right? If I start with detail, I might make my whole leaf too narrow. So this is getting the right width. Now I'm going to put in that central vein, kind of keeping the two sides proportional to each other here. And the next step, I think, is a really good example of the lines that I'm putting in. They're not detailed. This is going to look really cartoonish and simple, but the lines that I'm putting in next have a very specific job. I want to show where these lobes are and approximately how big they are. I'm not worried about the texture around the edge. I just want to say there's a big lobe here. They're going to get smaller as you go out this way. So take a look at these lines here and notice that it is not detailed. Right? So you see how this is just, I'm just saying I want a lobe that's sticking out this way about here. I'm not going and putting in details. I'm just sort of saying that these lines, their job is just to kind of get these general locations of the lobes. The next lines that I'm going to put in are going to start to refine the edges a little bit more. So this is a step again where we're going to start to look at negative shapes. So a negative shape is looking here, right? All right, looking at the white, what is this shape here? And then I'm going to take that shape and put it in right over here. You don't have to color in your negative shapes, I don't. But notice that this is just kind of looking your way around, what is this shape here? Right? And then getting that angle there. It's going to be easier to look at the negative shape than it will be to look at the edge, the leaf itself. Once I've got that, I'm now at a place that I can begin to really draw my leaf. And I'm going to do this next drawing of this leaf sort of in two stages. And you're going to see the first one is going to get a bunch of information, and then I'm going to really tighten that up. So I'm now going to put down my non-photo blue pencil. I pick up my regular graphite pencil, and this is what I'm doing. Notice that this is serrated along the edge, this isn't. Here I'm just, it's enough for my brain just to kind of go, it's straight and then kind of coming in like this, right? That this one is, you know, that just sort of generally getting these shapes. I'm refining those a little bit. I'm doing this lightly with my graphite pencil. Some of these lines will show through a little bit, but I'm not really punching it in at this point. But just that task of kind of refining those shapes, that's enough for my brain at once. Have you ever tried to draw a leaf with a serrated edge and kind of have this experience? You kind of start going around, right, around the leaf, and you get so into these jaggies that you get this thing that kind of looks like that, right? It is not a satisfying experience. When you're going, your brain has a real hard time at the same time going, we're going this way, right? You're just so, So if I do this first, I can then superimpose on top of that my jagged serrated edge. So if I have a clear guideline, then it's easy to come along that and get my serrations in. But if I do that from the start, I get so into that From here, I'm going to start to look at what the veins do. So I've got my central vein. Notice that it's fading towards the tip. The veins, actually notice that they each go to a tip. Each of those veins is out going to one of those tips. So there's a relationship between the veins and the shape of that outside edge of the leaf. I can put in a few side veins. And even on those, I want to just sort of track the fact that, okay, there's a big thing sticking out here. I'm going to have a vein that's going to start to kind of go out towards that and then peter out. So I don't want to have a tip of a plant like that and have my vein go that way. It's going to go towards the tip, suggesting where that is. Same thing here. I'm not drawing in every vein. It's hard to see the veins in here. Out here I can see the veins better. So I don't put them where I don't see them. There is no one way to do it, but the general approach of starting blocking in that shape and working your way towards those details, I use time and time again on just about everything that I draw. Give it a try on this leaf here. Let's just take 5 minutes and draw this leaf. There is, for the original shape, there is no one right way to do it. Somebody, I saw in one of my last classes, somebody kind of looked at it as a rectangle with a triangle on top. That ended up being something that seemed to work pretty well for people. I like that visualization, but that's not the only way to do it. So whatever for you kind of works to initially block that shape in, give it a try. And see if you can be deliberate about the process of working your way towards that detail. So don't jump in going, that comes at the end. Also, as you're kind of starting here, we're still kind of some ways off from putting in that final edge. When you go to start to actually draw that edge, I'm going to suggest to you that instead of using heavy, even pressure all the way around that, so there's an even weight line, is to make your line some places lighter, some places darker and heavier, some places lighter, some places you can even kind of skip it out, some places punch it in. But have a line that's variable, a live, active line, and you may find that the whole picture becomes more interesting. So just when you get to that point of putting in that line, you're not quite there yet, all right? Experiment with putting in an active line. And the thing that's neat is because you've already got all this other stuff mapped out, all these other decisions made, you can just kind of come along now with your making your active line. You can be thinking about, I'm now making an active line with line variation. Ooh, because you've already worked out where that line goes. And you'll find that very often that makes for a much more interesting, visually dynamic drawing. Give you a few more minutes to play with this. Another thing you can play with is, what if you left part of the drawing unfinished? What if you worked in more detail and around part of the drawing, and then really put in some veins in some part, so that there's kind of a hierarchy of degrees of doneness in a picture? This does two things. Number one, it saves you a lot of time because you're not having to draw the whole leaf, right? The second is, very often these unfinished pictures that show you part of the process, so like, oh, you started doing this, then you did this, and then you really can work it into detail here. You get all the information, but people who look at it can also see the process that you did to get there. It makes for, again, for very dynamic, very interesting drawings. I think very often, like you look at, say, Da Vinci sketches, you'll see that all the time. There are parts where he's kind of zooming in on the area that he's really interested in, and there are other parts that are just done much more generally. And it makes those drawings much more visually interesting than ones that are worked out to a high degree of detail all the way across the drawing. So it's not really the approach that you usually see in scientific illustration, but you will find it's a great strategy for nature journaling because you save all this time, and very often it makes a much more interesting picture. If we give this about one more minute, I'm not going to sort of give everybody time to fully finish this, but if you already are kind of done, here's another fun thing you can do, is you can stick in a shadow. Imagine that there is light coming from this side of the picture. So usually we assume that in scientific illustration that the light is coming from the top left-hand side. So on this leaf, or on this side, sort of in here and here, down in here, right? You would be getting, those would be places where you just put a little bit of shadow, a little bit offset, so you can see like here's the point of it, here's the... You can also, the shadow of this little stem would be just off to the side there. In some places you can make the shadow come a little bit closer or even touch the leaf. Those would be places that the leaf is touching the pieces of paper. You put a shadow underneath your leaf drawing and it really starts to feel like it's lifting off the surface. Here I cheated and just did the drop shadow effect in the computer program. Yeah. That little bit of shadow really pops that leaf up. That's a fun thing to do in your sketches as well. I usually don't use straight up black for those shadows. I'll use some, often a kind of a purplish gray or a bluish gray. A shadow can often take up colors from things that are around it. You can even bring, this shadow actually has a little bit of green in it. There is no way to draw a leaf because there is no a leaf out there. There are different leaves on different plants. These are all just different things to look at when we're doing those. Another place that botanists really look and focus hard is the edge, the margin of the leaf. And they have come up with lots of different terms for those margins. And you can memorize these if you want to. Like there are bumps along the edge, that would be crenulate, and if they're like little tents, then that's dentate, dentes, like teeth, right? If they're small teeth, it's denticulate. If they're one side is big and the other side is small, so they're asymmetrical, usually this makes them point forward. That's serrate, and small is seriolate, and you can here's doubly serrate. So on this thing, there are little jaggies going up this big jaggy. But you don't have to sit in front of a leaf and sort of say to yourself like, oh my gosh, I'm really not sure if this is lobate, sinuate, or undulate, right? Because again, you are drawing a picture of it. This is great if you're going to be describing a leaf to somebody without using your hands, right? Then sure, memorize all those terms. We can draw, right? So, but realize how much thought the botanists have put into the texture of that edge. And when you get to your edge, don't just do a generic edge. Really look at that leaf. What are its edges doing? Is it serrate? Is it, you don't have to remember the terms, but it's nice when they're smooth. But here, again, this is where you'd really be kind of playing with, I'm going to kind of work that variable line, so not the same line weight, lighter, heavier, and lighter again as you're going around. Another place that you see interesting patterns is if you start to look at what the veins do on a leaf. Right? Now, what a lot of people do on their leaf drawings is you'll see they draw the leaf and they do this because that's what veins do. Right? No. Right? That's what you want to look at the leaf. Right? Sometimes they're parallel. Right? Sometimes they branch. Sometimes they're shaped like a menorah here. Here like a parking lot. Here's a net. So there is no one way to do it. The answer is in the plant that's in front of you. And so you start looking for it, you'll start to find plants with really, really interesting venation patterns. And then you'll be like, oh wow, check this out. Cool venation patterns will start to jump out at you. And if that's not on your radar, we're just, first of all, there's an area of beauty and wonder that we're missing, and we just sort of draw the same generic veins in every plant that we do. So again, look at the veins. You don't need to memorize the words, but pay attention to what the veins do. And don't assume that there is one way to do those veins, because then nature will surprise you. And be on the lookout for new and interesting and wonderful things that plant veins are doing. Right? This one is coming out as a star. This one, let me show you a trick. If you started drawing this leaf, what happens is you kind of glance at it, and your brain quickly says, hey, I know what's going on here, now I'm going to draw that. All right? But if you get yourself initially to look at it a little bit more carefully, you can pick up some other subtleties, and if you are really intentional about catching those, and the best way to do that is to say them out loud. Then when you go to draw that, you will get all those. So what are some things that you could say about this venation pattern? What are the veins in this doing?
Opposite.
All right, so they're opposite. Are they opposite?
Not always. Not always.
All right, not always. So some of them are opposite, right? All right, there, we're opposite. There, we're not. Interesting, okay? But notice how, like, if you just kind of like, I know what these veins are doing, you would just go and you put these in all opposite or all alternate, right? There's opposite. There's opposite. Oh, they must be all opposite. Oh, yeah? But because we did a closer look, right, now you're going to get that subtlety in there. What else do you notice about it?
Curving.
All right, they're curving. They're coming out straight, and then towards the tips, there's a lot more of a curve. All right, look at that curve. Little curve. Little curve. All right, it seems to straighten as it goes into that mid vein. All right, what else could we say about it?
They're parallel.
Oh, there's this wonderful parallel kind of parking lot look to this, right? And how easy would it be just to kind of get these curving things and kind of miss, if your leaf doesn't look like a parking lot and you're drawing a Himalaya berry, you're going to miss it, right? What else could we say?
Edges.
The tips.
Right, so what do the tips do?
The tips normally point out.
All right, so the tips are all pointing forward. So just by articulating these things, specifying these things, when you go to now draw the veins in, you're going to catch all those details. When you're looking at it, if you actually say it out loud. It turns out if you look at the leaf and you just sort of think about it to yourself, what your brain tends to do is kind of go like, and these things you notice just go and blast out the back of your head. But if you articulate them out loud, so as you're looking at the veins, you start saying things you're noticing about those veins. When you go to draw that leaf, you will capture all those details. All right, it's a memory trick called the production effect. It's verbalizing what you are noticing as you notice it. And then those things stick with you. Very, very powerful memory trick. And then we saw these veins earlier, but now we look at them, and now that you've been thinking about veins, you can notice subtleties about them that you otherwise wouldn't have noticed. All right, so there aren't generic veins out there. I'm now going to do, with the help of my assistant, a few demonstrations of some other ways of drawing veins that are some great hacks and shortcuts. And so I'm going to close this. I'm going to get some paper here. And does somebody have any leaves that they brought with them? All right, we'll bring our leaves forward. Could you
Not very exciting.
run out and grab me a leaf about yay big? Find a leaf
Also out.
from outside. Find a cool one, bring it on in. All right. I'm going to ask people to come on forward here, and I'm going to do some demonstrations of some ways of drawing leaf veins that are going to be very useful for you. I'm going to move these guys. Perfect, very good. Oh, you picked an interesting one for us. I like it. So if you could take that camera and point it at this piece of paper, I'm going to show you some tricks that I use to help me get leaf veins. And so I'll just be drawing right here. And all right, so I'm going to be drawing right here. So here's trick number one. You're drawing a leaf. You know what you can do? You can trace it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just come along here and I'm going to go very lightly because I don't want to really press it up against the side of the leaf because the leaf is flexible. I can lightly, loosely get that, and then I've got that. So then when I put my leaf over to the side, I can draw now a little bit more deliberately. You see how having that leaf kind of out there, if you're doing some lobed leaf, oh, this is such a savior, right? You're like some black oak leaf with all those lobes sticking out, right? This little kind of trace it first approach. And you also then get a leaf that is exactly life size. So that's a useful trick. Oh, look at that. Look at that. It's got light veins on a dark surface. If there's a leaf that has dark veins on a light surface, guess what? That's easy to do, right? You just draw your light surface and you have your dark veins on it and boom, you're out of there. So, but if you're trying to do it the reverse way, that gets more challenging because, you know, you put down your dark leaf and you put your light vein on top of it, it really doesn't show up, right? So you could work your way around all of these things, but that's, right? Some people have the patience to do that, but I'm attention deficit disorder illustrator, and so I never work that way. I'm going to show you a few ways of drawing veins on leaves that are a lot faster, and I think you can have a lot of fun with them. So one way of doing this, I'm going to start with colored pencil, is if with my colored pencil I am on paper that is fairly thick, or there's a bunch of other paper underneath it, then if I press hard as I go down, then it is going to start to emboss that paper. So, let's see, these are fairly opposite. And I can even emboss it a little bit further. This is an embossing tool. It's a Kemper Tools embossing tool. This is actually made for people who work with clay. And it's got a rounded edge, ends on two sides. If you don't have something like this, you can take a dead ballpoint pen. It works just about as well. This works a little bit better than a dead ballpoint pen, but you can press down
to give the effect of the veins.
Yeah, I'm getting where the vein is. I want there to be a real groove, a dip where that vein is, so that then when I draw over that, boom, light veins, and it's not going into where those were because it's down in a groove.
It's lower.
Exactly right. So it's lower, so I get those. So that's the embossing trick.
Debossing.
Debossing. Okay, debossing. Good term. All right. So I'm going to deboss these, and so that's a lot of fun.
What's that called, a Kemper tool?
This is, I've got some here. If you want to pick one up, you can grab one of these. They cost me $5 a piece, and I sell them for $5. But if you can't afford that, just take one and pay it forward in the community in another way. Like do something really awesome that you otherwise wouldn't have done, and then we are good. All right. So here is that's trick number one. That's with colored pencils. All right. But sometimes, even without the embossing tool, if I really press hard enough, then you can emboss your paper.
You can use your fingernail.
Look at that.
I'm doing it right now.
All right. Yeah, the embossing tool is a little bit, but the danger is,
Precise.
yeah, is if you, you know, you make a mark and then you decide you don't want it there, too late, right? It's there, right? It's the texture of the paper. Let's take a look at some ways of playing with veins with watercolor, right?
So this can be done with any pointed tool, right? It could be.
That can be done with any pointed tool, but you want it to have a slightly rounded tip. A tool with a
Mom, we
slightly
have
rounded
those,
tip.
like, clay tools at home.
And let's see here. I'm now going to demo some things with watercolor. I am first going to put some green paint out here, and I'm just going to let this green paint dry over here, and I'll come back into this area in a little bit. So I put some green paint down. I'm going to let that dry. I will be back into that area in a moment. In the meantime, I'm going to jump over on this side and show you a different technique that I can do with
Watercolors.
watercolors. This is a white Prismacolor pencil. Prismacolor pencils are fairly waxy, and watercolor and wax are not good friends, right? So what I can do is with this, I can draw my veins in a little bit more. And what those veins are doing, this one is going to loop up here. From off in here, it's going to loop up. And then it's going to come out there a little bit. If I sort of hold my head at a weird angle, I can see a slightly different sheen where my white pencil is on this paper. But sometimes at the wrong angle, you'll be doing this and you're like, I'm drawing with white paper on white paper with white pencil on white paper. I don't see anything that I've got going on here. That's always a surprise then when you get to the next step. But now what I'm going to do is I can just come over this. Look at that. There are those veins.
For some reason, it doesn't show as much.
Yeah, the wax of the pencil is protecting the paper. Right? If I had first tinted that paper light green, I could then put white on top of it and then come back over that once it was dry. But isn't that cool?
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
So now, but this is, I want this to be light green, say. And here, this is great. I got these white veins, but I wanted them to be light green. So I'm going to show you another approach. And here, I have a jelly roll gel pen. You can get these online or in your local art supply store. If there is a local art supply store, I want to encourage everybody to use sort of art supply stores, real brick and mortar shops in your neighborhood. There's two brands that I recommend. The Jelly Roll is one. Those are a little bit easier to find. There's one that I think works a little bit better, but they're a little bit harder to find. That's the Signo Uniball gel pen. So it's by the Signo company. Those are often harder to find in stores. Don't buy a whole bunch of gel pens at the same time because they will dry out before the whole thing is used up. And if you get a whole bunch at the same time, you've got a whole bunch drying up, well, then you've got some tools that you can use for embossing paper or debossing paper, but you'll be sad. So just get them one at a time. But the neat thing about this is that if you let your paper dry, that's not really dry, but I'll still just go ahead with this anyway, is you can draw white lines, all right, on a dark surface.
That's nice.
Isn't that cool? So it starts to kind of not work as, there we go.
It needs to be fully dried before this.
It works best if you really let it dry. But we just didn't have that luxury here. You see that this is still working okay. And sometimes you put something down and it's too bright. You can then tap it with your finger, and you see that some of it comes up on your finger there. So you can give it a few taps, and that can, you put something down and you go, oh no, I wanted that to be lighter. Also, if you put something down and then you realize, I didn't want that there at all, these jelly roll, these gel pens are water soluble, so you can brush over it and it kicks it back or it disappears. I'm able to stain it. So if I want this to be light green, I can come along here and stain it light green.
That's nice. So on the wax pencil we cannot, but on this one we can.
That's right. Although with the wax pencil, here I've got some light green down here. I'm going to put a mark over that. You can then, so I've got a little bit more of that green showing through that pencil on there. Kind of fun. So those are some tricks that you can use to help you be able to draw veins on a surface. All right. Again, you don't have to draw every vein. A suggestion of veins is going to be often much more effective than really noodling in every little part of the vein that you see. Alrighty, here we go. And now on with our regular scheduled program. So we had seen this before. Here's some green paint, watercolor paint I've put down. I can draw over that with a gel pen. And I get these kind of stark lines. And this is useful when I want light veins on a dark surface. And then I can, some places this is too intense. I'm going to rub the brush in here and also use some more green paint. I'm going to tint these veins green, and you can make them look very veiny. It's a good trick.
So more natural looking like that, you think? Or?
I think so, yeah. I mean, this is just...
Unless it's like a new leaf and it's all fresh.
Yeah. I mean, if it looks like that, draw it like that. But it probably won't look like that.
Okay.
So there's no... The answer is always going to be in the leaf that you're looking at.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing? Right?
What does it look like?
Yeah.
Articulate out.
So it's not about having a trick to do something and then following the trick. It's about having like, oh, I want to get that effect. Now and realizing that you've got plasticity in that. You can kick it back or pull it up, depending on how your leaf is looking.
Yeah.
Other things that are really fun to do is if there are insect bites and chews and marks on your leaf, put those in. They're so much fun. This is one of my favorite little kind of bugs that nibbles leaves. And people who have a rose garden, they hate these guys, the leaf miners. And it's this tiny little insect. Here's the top of the leaf, here's the bottom of the leaf. It's so small, it lives in between there going munch, 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 munch in that leaf. So you can see as it's going along, it's growing and getting bigger.
Wow.
And then you go here and you pull this up to the sun, you can see the little critter in there kind of wiggling around and chewing and burping and having a great little bug time. And then they'll pupate in there and fly out through the surface of the leaf. It's really, really neat. But different species of insects will eat different kinds of plants. So the kind of insect damage you're seeing on this leaf may be something that is unique and specific to that plant. So rather than putting in a generic bug bite, look for, like, how do bug bites look on this? I'm going to draw this bug bite. The same is true with plant diseases and viruses that make all these neat spots on the plants. They'll make different colors of spots, and some are solid colors. Some have a rainbow. Some have like an outer ring of one color and an inner of another color. And whether they're close to the edge, in the middle, if they're on a vein,
All those are things you want to pay attention to. And when you're copying them, you try to be specific to, this is what I'm seeing on this plant. And that really makes your plant, not just the plant, but the whole community that is connected with that plant. You're showing them just in the surface of a leaf. Right? So I really like trying to get specific, like what do the spots do on this? Some people, when they're drawing a plant, they will kind of airbrush out all the spots. That's like these sort of supermodels when they kind of airbrush out all their lines and kind of Photoshop their wastes. We don't want to do that to a plant. They've got, what makes it perfect is that it's here, it's connected with all these other things in the environment. And that really tells a story. And I love to have those stories revealed in my sketches. Something that you may find happens if you really get into drawing leaves is winter will come. So friends on the East Coast, all right, you know what we're talking about. You're ready to draw leaves and there are no leaves on trees. Is anybody in this room an East Coast naturalist?
No, naturalist.
East Coast
Native,
naturalist.
I thought you meant native human.
Yeah. Well, East Coast naturalists, they will blow you away. So people who are watching who are out in snow country, you know what we're talking about. These people who will walk out and there are these bare trees there and they walk up to the trees, they can identify every tree, not by the shape of the leaves because the leaves are gone. They know what the buds look like. They know what the twigs look like. They know what the branches, the little scars, the leaf scars that are left behind when a branch, when a leaf falls off. They're different on different plants. But people in California here, we are twignorant. Right? We're completely twignorant. We do not know our twigs. Like we draw a bird, right, and then we put a little brown mark underneath its feet. That's the stick that it's on, right? It's not a branch, it's the stick, right? Oh, here's Amelia's favorite joke these days. Hey, what's brown and sticky? A stick! Oh, sorry. But we don't want sticks, we want branches. Sticks are generic. Branches are specific to individual species. And they're actually as different from one as another as the leaves themselves. But California naturalists, we don't know our twigs at all. So I'm going to show you just a little bit of stuff that East Coast naturalists know really well. And I want to invite you folks to this month to start to check out some twigs as well. All right? Each individual plant has its own twig look to it. So there isn't a generic twig out there. Here are the parts of them. There are buds at the tip. There are two types of buds. There are the axillary buds. Those are the ones that we saw before where the leaf attaches.
And the other one is terminal bud.
That's right.
I've learned about the stem in school.
You learned about the stem in school. Excellent. So how old are you?
8.
Right. So the youngest person in the room right now knows the most about twigs. Right? Because they actually studied some of this in his class. So he knows that there are these terminal buds. They don't have leaves underneath them. And then there are these axillary buds, and that's where the leaf is. And look at this, where the leaf was, there's a special spot there, what's called a leaf scar. The leaf just doesn't rip off the plant, right? Before the tree sheds its leaf, it makes what's called an abscission layer. It makes this wall on the inside where the leaf is still attached. It makes this little wall in there, and then it doesn't have a gaping hole when the leaf falls off. But it leaves behind this special mark that also has these little scars in it where all the vascular bundles came through into the leaf. And it's different pattern on each of the trees. California naturalists, this is totally off our radar. Right? Once the leaves are off the tree, I'm going to go look at something else. All right? So there's no leaves right here under the terminal bud, but in wintertime when that bud is sitting there, all right, it actually makes a little mark, a little ring, a bracelet that goes all the way around. The bud scale scars go all the way around the branch. And that is what's going to be made here at wintertime. So what you can do is you can look back on a branch and kind of go like, this is 1 year's growth.
This from here to here is last year's growth. This was this year's, this is last year's, this will be the next year. And look at this. This year, I see 1, 2 in here, and it's short here, 1, 2, 3, 4. This was a better growth year last year, right? So the history of the plant is written into the twig. Isn't that beautiful? Right? But again, California naturalists, right? We're not hip to twigs. So my invitation is, let's geek out on twigs.
Okay.
It is really fun. It is really, really, really interesting. So, and the buds of them, it's different on each plant. Like a willow has this perfectly smooth one solid cap. Some plants have two sides. Some, these pieces overlap like scales on a pine cone. Some are round, some are pointed. Different buds on different plants. What is this?
Leaf scar.
Isn't that cool? So here's where the axillary bud is. This is the leaf scar. And look, you can see these little bundles where the vessels came through. Right? And then you look on a different plant, it's going to be a different pattern.
There's the leaf scar, the axillary, and then it looks like pairs of two.
Yes, I see what you're saying. These are called lenticels, these little kind of white spots here, little pores in the tree for some gas exchange in the trunk here. You don't see that on old branches, but you want to look for it because it's cool when you do see it.
What is this called?
Lenticels. And how do you spell that? I don't know. Let's go back. We're asking the dyslexic lenticels. Lenticels. And look at this. Yeah. So think for a moment. Don't say it out loud. What animal face do you see in this? What animal is it? All right. Everybody decide for themselves.
Okay.
What do you see?
A monkey.
A monkey face. What do you get?
Llama.
A llama. Any others?
Camel.
What?
Koala bear.
Koala bear. Yeah.
I see a camel.
A camel. Isn't that cool? So some of these, there are little faces looking out of the leaf scars. But we California naturalists, we've never noticed this. My invitation to you is to let's get past our twignorance, right? Let's go for it on twigs. Look at this beautiful little scar around here. What is that?
Oh,
Here's the hand.
Leaf scar.
No, it's the growth.
bud scale scar.
Oh yeah, you're in. There you go. So these things. Isn't that neat? And so when you start looking at a twig, there's all these stories. Here's my lenticels. Here's my bud scale scar. And look at this. This scar here looks like a koala bear.
The branch scar.
So here's the branch scar. Here's the little leaf bud scar. So we start looking at these things. We're going to see the world in a different way. We have this tiny little moment to be present and alive on this incredible planet. There's so much complexity and beauty around us all the time, but we don't look at it because we think we know what's going on there. And then you just peel the layers back a little bit, and there's a whole new level of wonder right beyond the point where you usually stopped paying attention. And if we can get ourselves to start to pay attention into these areas, the world opens up to us, becomes even more precious, even more of a miracle. And that's why I love sort of opening up a new area like this. My challenge for you this month is to play with leaves and twigs, right? Not the generic ones in our heads, but look around and see if you can find leaves that amaze you, right? And record those in your journal. What is the coolest venation pattern that you can see? What's the best shape? What is the most surprising shaped leaf that you can find? And to do the same with twigs, right? How many people are willing to draw and make a little study of this month, 4 leaves and 4 twigs? Raise a paw, all right? 4 leaves and 4 twigs, that's what I'm asking of you. And really explore them. Try in each one to learn something new. Try to get yourself to notice something that you have never noticed before. And the world will open up a whole new layer for you. East Coast naturalists are like we do this all the time, right? We got those twigs down, right?
But especially for people who, this isn't really on our radar. But even if you are, East Coast Naturals, so East Coast Naturals, I'm talking to you, all right? I want you to go out there and look at your twigs, and I want you to notice things about them that you have never seen before. So not just looking at the features that you always see, that you know are there to help you identify it, but what is the thing behind the thing? That's my challenge for you. All right? I'm going to leave you all with a poem by David Wagner. All right? And I haven't memorized this one yet, so I'm going to read it off the screen. I usually don't read off my slides, but so you can read along with me if you want, or you can just listen. The poem's called Lost. He says, "Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger. Must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers, I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, then you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. So my challenge for you is to be the wren. Become the wren and see the singularity and the beauty in every branch around you. See that which you have never noticed before, and to stand in awe and wonder at the beauty around us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, these workshops are sponsored by viewers like you. If it's possible to make a donation to me to continue these workshops, I greatly appreciate that. And I've got a little donation can here. If you have a practice in your family of donating to nonprofit causes at the end of the year that are things that you really want to support, consider the Nature Journal Club as one that you might want to support. If you make a donation through my website, those donations are all tax deductible. And and you'll immediately will get in the mail all the sort of tax relevant information. If that doesn't work with your funding and finances at this time, I want you just to keep nature journaling, keep watching these videos, keep coming to these workshops. You probably need nature journaling more than anybody else. But I do ask, in lieu of making a donation, that you, in your community around you, you do something of kindness and of grace that you otherwise would not have done to pass it forward. Thank you very much, and happy holidays to all of you.